The East hasn't been this good since the 80s. No, it's not the 90s. The 80s had Isaiah's Pistons, Bird's Celtics, Dr. J's Sixers, and Young Michael's Bulls. The Cavs and Hawks were even good. And this year, the East playoffs are going to be so good, so much better than the West. 4 teams are competing for the #1 seed, so it's time to do a deep dive on all of them. At the end, I'll tell you who I think is going to represent the East in the finals. Now, when we analyze these teams, we have to include one stat. One stat has predicted the NBA champion 38 of the last 41 years. The NBA champ is either top 5 in offense or top 5 in defense. Check this out. Take a close look at all of these teams. The only 3 exceptions in 41 years I have highlighted: the 2011 Mavericks and 06 Heat, which were both top 10 in offense and defense, and the 95 Rockets, who are considered the biggest underdog of all time. So which East team will make it to the finals? The top 4 right now are Miami, Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly. Of course, we also have to talk about Nets. And don't talk to me about the Bulls or the Raptors. I know they're nice stories and they have really good players, but unless you are like a diehard fan of those teams, you don't actually think they are going to make the finals. According to Las Vegas, those 5 teams I mentioned actually have a chance, and Vegas knows what they're doing. You see this desert? Yeah, this is Dubai 30 years later because they found oil. You see this desert? Well, this is Vegas 30 years later, and their oil is gambling. They make a lot of money getting these things right. They say the Bucks are the favorite to repeat as East champs, and you can see the rest of the teams listed in order. But let's start with the Bucks. They are 5th in offense and 14th in defense. Now, there's a lot to love, but they have one huge flaw. They're favorites to win again because 1, they already did it and they know how to win as a group. And 2, Giannis is the most dominant player in basketball. I actually think he can win MVP over Jokic and Embiid. In back-to-back games, he just had a block on Joel Embiid to win the game and a step-back 3 to send the Nets to overtime. And Giannis is actually making his free throws. Against the Nets, he went 15 of 19, and that's not a fluke. But their big flaw is Brook Lopez's health. He opens things up for them offensively so that Giannis can play the 4. And he's great on defense, but he just came back from surgery. And if Brook isn't great, they are not the same. Next is the Nets, 9th on offense, 20th on defense. A lot of that is mirage because they haven't been healthy. But KD is a proven championship #1. Kyrie is a proven championship #2. They have great role players. Seth Curry is an elite shooter. Bruce Brown's awesome. I think the Andre Drummond pickup was really underrated, and we could just keep going. But their big flaw is Ben Simmons. If he plays, of course it improves their defense big time, but it also lets the other team just foul him and put a 30% free throw shooter at the line. I think Ben is still going to be a disaster in the biggest moments, and they have to put him on the floor. He is a mentally fragile dude who I have zero faith in. Next is the Celtics, 11th on offense, 1st on defense. But I have horrible news. They have no chance. I know they've been the best team in the East since the All-Star break. Jason Tatum is playing like an MVP, but 2 huge problems have come up. The first is Robert Williams, who got a meniscus tear, arguably their 3rd best player on some nights. He was key to their #1 defense. I know Boston hopes he's going to come back, but he just had knee surgery, and a dude who plays as explosive as he does will not be 100%. The second problem is even bigger. I was watching the C's game in Toronto the other night because Jaylen Brown is on my fantasy team, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum aren't playing. I don't remember an injury. And then a report comes out that some of the Celtics are not vaccinated. Canada still has that vaccine mandate. And wouldn't you know it, if the playoffs started today, the C's and the Raptors would be in round 1. That could obviously become like the biggest story in the NBA in the next few weeks. Sixers, 13th on offense, 9th on defense. They have the same odds as Boston, but I have a confession. Might have overreacted just a little bit when they got James Harden. I said if the Nets and Philly played, it wouldn't even be close. the Sixers would dominate that series. Not only do you get a scared Ben Simmons in that series, but you get Joel Embiid, who I know would love to just embarrass Ben on the court. Can you imagine like a really motivated Joel Embiid who's already playing like an MVP against Ben Simmons? Ugh. Okay, since I went on that rant, James Harden has ruined it. He is the most inconsistent star of all time. These are his numbers as a Sixer so far, which are good. But this is Harden in their biggest games. Only one good performance against the Bucks. His nickname is Small Game James for a reason. I do not care how good Joel Embiid plays because James Harden could sabotage it like he always does in big playoff games. And I know that's harsh, but that has been Harden's legacy the past 12 years. Next is the Miami Heat, 12th on offense, 4th on defense. They have the most overall talent of any team. Imagine Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero on the same team. No one can match that top 4. But I am a huge believer in needing an MVP type player to win. And the Heat will never have the best player in the series. Jimmy Butler against Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, Giannis, or Jason Tatum. The Heat will lose. Now, I'm not saying they can't make the conference finals. I think they are that talented, but in a close game 7, like just one possession to win it, I do not trust their half-court offense. And I wish I had something more like nerdy, analytical to go on than just that gut feeling. And if I'm wrong, I will admit it, but I just don't see it. I do see, though, the Milwaukee Bucks. I actually really wanted to pick the Nets. Like, I actually did pick the Nets, but then I switched it last minute. There are just too many question marks with Brooklyn. Like, is Ben Simmons gonna play? And if he does, what's he gonna look like on offense? Kyrie and KD are injury prone. As talented as they are, I can't remember the last time neither one of them was injured in the playoffs. But with the Bucks, I get a group that has a ton of confidence having just won it, and Giannis is better. He is hitting 44% on long mid-range twos, 75% free throws, and I think that will continue in the playoffs. I know the Nets would have beat them last year if they were healthy, but last year was different. The Bucks are even better. By the way, what does Vegas think about Giannis winning a 3rd MVP? Well, these were the odds just last week, but with his clutch play recently, this is what they look like now. From a 12-1 long shot to a 5-1 underdog. I still think Jokic is going to win back-to-back MVPs, but Giannis is at least in the conversation. I actually wish you could bet on who finishes second. I do think Giannis is going to pass Joel Embiid before the playoffs. And maybe if Giannis wins another title, back-to-back chips as the best player on a team, people will finally give him the respect he deserves. And a while ago, a lot of people loved this video. I broke down why NBA players disrespect Giannis, because they do for some reason. Here's a whole video breaking it down.